It's a hot, sunny day, and the temperature is getting quite sweltering in the car, which raises an interesting question. Am I going to get sunburn? It's been a very hot summer, and cars in this weather soon get very stifling if you don't have the air conditioning on. Talking to a lot of other MG ZS EV owners, quite a lot have been looking at getting tints fitted to the windows of their car, and one of the main reasons for them doing this is just to cut down on the amount of heat that is entering the vehicle. First of all, just a little bit of background information. The visible spectrum that we can see is just one small part of a much bigger spectrum, which includes invisible kinds of light. Beyond the red end of the spectrum, there is a band known as infrared, and at the other side of the spectrum, beyond blue, there is something called ultraviolet, which is a higher energy form of light invisible to the human eye. Now, the glass that we have installed in modern homes is a special type of glass which allows ultraviolet light to pass straight through it, and yet it reflects infrared. The idea behind this is that the higher energy ultraviolet light can go through the glass and then heat up the inside of your homes. That light then gets re-emitted as infrared, but the infrared is reflected by the glass and so remains trapped inside the house, keeping it warm. The big question is, does the glass in a car behave the same way, or does it reflect ultraviolet? Now, in order to carry out this test, I've got a number of little things here with me. First of all, I've installed a light meter app on my phone. Now, although these windows on the MG are not tinted, actually all glass absorbs a certain amount of light, and what I'd like to know is how much light are these windows absorbing anyway. I've also got a little UVA sensor here. Now, I will point out that this only measures UVA light. Ultraviolet is often split into three categories: UVA, UVB, UVC. UVA is the least harmful, whereas UVC is the most harmful. Now, one thing that this test is not going to show is whether UVC and UVB is able to get through these windows. And finally, I've also got an infrared sensor here that will do the same thing. I would like to point out that this test is not very scientific. I'm not controlling circumstances, and I may not hold the phone in the same position every single time I do it, which will affect the results. So first of all, let's have a look at the front windscreen. I'm going to put on the light meter. I will share this with you. So I'm going to do a bit of a screen recording, and hopefully you should be able to see that recording just to the side of me. If I hold it to the windscreen and then press the button, it's reading about 7,271. I'm going to try and hold it in the same position outside now, and it's reading about 9,000. Let's do it inside, 6,500, and now it's reading about 12,000. It does certainly look as though results inside the car are less than they are outside. Now, don't read too much into that. The fact that it's reading maybe half the figure doesn't mean only half the light's getting through. This is measuring light level in lux, and lux is not a linear scale. Twice the lux value does not mean twice the intensity. Now let's have a look at the side window. Hopefully I can do this a little bit better. If I press the light button, I'm getting 4,400 about. If I hold it a bit higher, 5,900. So we can see 6,000 inside the car. It must have got a bit brighter. About 6,000 outside, 6,000 and 6,000. So it looks as though the side window actually lets all of the light through, that there isn't the absorption that we saw for the front windscreen. Now let's have a look at the roof blind. Now, the roof blind on the MG is tinted, so it certainly does block a lot of the light. Let's see how much. Holding the light meter to the roof, it's reading about 444, whereas here it's over 2,000, about 2,266. Once again, 410, and about 2400. So that's actually absorbing quite a lot of the light. It's probably a 70% tint, something in that region. I'm not sure exactly what. Now let's move on to infrared. So I'll start taking readings on my phone. When I point this out of the front window, it's measuring it in watts per meter squared, a measure of power. Power intensity, so that's reading about 300 watts per meter squared, and outside about 380, inside just below 300, outside about 400. So it is blocking about 25% of the infrared, which seems to be consistent with the amount of light that was being blocked. Right, let's have a look at the amount of infrared coming through the side window. So if I just point the sensor straight out of the window, we're getting somewhere around 200 watts per meter squared. If I lower it, it's gone down to about 150. So yeah, about 200, and well, a little bit more now, 160. It looks to me as though the side window isn't blocking quite as much. We're probably, it looks though as though it increased. I think that's just the way I held it. We probably are losing about 25% of the infrared. The thing that surprises me is that unlike domestic glass, some infrared is actually getting through. Right, now let's have a look at how much infrared is coming through the top. If I point the sensor up there, we've got a reading of about 200, 300. It's climbing a little bit because some clouds are moving away, so 366 at the moment. But as soon as I move it to the blind, it's dropped to about 30. So it's blocking somewhere in the region of about 90% of the infrared. So that top blind, it really is quite good at blocking the infrared. Not quite all of it, but only about 10% is getting through. Okay, let's move on to ultraviolet. Now this is using a slightly different scale on the meter. It's giving it as a percentage scale, and it appears to be off scale at the moment. Let's start looking at the front windscreen. If I point this at the front windscreen, it's giving a reading of about 8,000, but when I point it straight out, that's gone up to 9,800. So as with the infrared, it's blocking somewhere in the region of about 20%, 15-20% of the ultraviolet. But that does mean that a lot of the UVA is getting through. Whether that applies to the UVC or the UVB, on the other hand, I don't know. But certainly most of the ultraviolet is getting through. Right, let's have a look at the ultraviolet coming through the side window. When I hold the sensor to the side window, I'm getting somewhere in the region of, if I hold it steady, just over 9,000%. If I lower it and look at the window, it's gone down to about 7,000-8,000. So once again, we're losing maybe about 15% of the ultraviolet when I go from the window down to the bottom. Right, let's have a look at the ultraviolet coming through the top. When I point the sensor straight up, now I'm not pointing directly at the sun here, but I'm getting about 2,000. If I go to the blind, it's gone down to about 100%, just below 100, 2,000 to about 100. So the blind is cutting out about 95% of the ultraviolet. What we can see from these results is that actually a lot of UVA and infrared light is getting through both the side window and the front window. And although I've not tested for B or C, that ultraviolet that is getting through, along with the infrared, is going to cause the inside of this vehicle to get very hot. And if we can filter it out using tints, it should make a huge difference to the temperature inside the vehicle on a sunny day. What we've seen is that the sunroof on the vehicle actually is really good at cutting down on both infrared and ultraviolet. The front windscreen cuts down on some of it, but not all. But the side window is doing very, very little. Probably about 25% of ultraviolet and infrared being cut out by the front window, but maybe only 10%, something like that, 15% through the side. Now, one little thing that I ought to mention is that if you are thinking of getting tints fitted to your windows, then first of all, you need to be aware that there are insurance consequences to this. So please talk to your insurer beforehand and check that they're happy for you to fit tints, and be aware it may involve a price change to your premium. Also be aware that there are legal limits as to how much light has to be able to get through each of the individual windows. If you've had tints fitted, please let me know a little bit about it in the comments below. Have you found that it makes a huge difference to the comfort inside your vehicle? And how much did it cost? I'm expecting it to be somewhere in the region of about £200, maybe 300 tops. Is that right? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.